Welcome back to The Route to Success. This is part two with Nikki Hamilton, founder of a Promise Kept Foundation and a longtime victim advocate. In episode one, Nikki broke down advocacy as a learnable skill. Thank you. I needed that. I'm sure everybody else did too, not a personality trait. She shared how neutral language, documentation, and support people can keep you steady when systems feel cold. Today, we go deeper. You're going to leave here with practical self-advocacy tools you can use today, plus a clear look at what victims and families need after the crisis spotlight fades. We will also talk about building a nonprofit that stays for the long haul, how Nikki is building a resource navigation network, and what it takes to protect mission integrity from day one. Nikki, welcome back. I'm so excited to have this second conversation with you.
So excited to be here with you again. Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, of course. I feel like we could probably do 15 more conversations, to be honest.
I agree.
All right, let's jump right in because I know you're excited and you have a lot to give here today. So thank you again. I'm going to just say this episode is filled with gratitude. Let's say it that way so we don't keep saying the thank yous. All right. Many people freeze when they need to speak up, and I will raise my hand. Say that's me if anybody else out there feels that way, especially in medical settings and workplaces and the justice system. What are your top 5 practical tips for self-advocacy someone can use today?
So the first one I would definitely say is asking, you want to know what your options are. So whether you're at the workplace, in a medical setting, in a criminal justice setting, you want to know fully and clearly what are your options. When a homicide happens and a victim's there, they don't know what their options are. Is it the death penalty? Is it, life sentence? Is it 5 years, 10 years? What are the charges? What is the state attorney looking at? What does law enforcement want? All of those things. And I think it helps to get them to kind of detail out, these are our options. Sometimes there's only one option, police and law enforcement, state attorneys, they only have enough evidence to pursue one set of charges or two. The other is always ask for things in writing. Follow up with an email, ask them to send you an email detailing the conversation. And if they're unwilling or you don't get it, to then you send the follow up and just say, I just want to recap the conversation we had today. I want to make sure that I fully understand what was discussed. And then you send it to them and you let them correct anything that may be wrong. That helps clear a little bit of misunderstanding, I think.
I love that. I am a big one on getting everything in writing. And I will tell you, when I'm working with my team, I always follow up our meetings with emails and writing of what we talked about. And I think they probably think I'm crazy for it, but you just said it. It helps to get things in writing.
Yeah. And I think especially in nonprofit meetings and stuff, you have a board meeting and stuff, and everybody can walk out of the room and have a different perception of what was discussed. Right. And I love recaps. Here's what we discussed. These are the key points. Here's the action items, takeaways. One of the things I actually have always done is in the board minutes, I have a table of action items that we keep track of and we add to at each meeting, and we take off and we show what it is, who has the ownership of it, and what the date of completion is. And I think it's been immensely helpful in keeping everybody, people are volunteers. They're not living it, just like detectives and state attorneys, they have tons of cases. So for them to have something that's okay, this is what we need to discuss this time. This is what we've accomplished last time, just staying real organized in that fashion. I think one of the other thing is that a lot of times we operate in emotion, as we discussed in part one. But I think not saying this isn't fair or those emotional statements, and you can rephrase them with my goal is clarity and safety. And then always pause. So I think number 4 would be always pause before making a decision. Often I think we're very much in we live in a society of instant gratification, right? So it makes us want to instantly respond and give someone, and sometimes the other party wants an answer right away. Like you go in for, a job review or a promotion, and they want you to say yes. Like, here's the new salary, here's this, like, and they want you to just say yes. And I always try to say, like, I need 24 hours, and just give yourself that time. I know, I'm sure in your history professionally, there's been times that like you say yes and you agree and you think something sounds great. And then you get home and you're like, wait a minute. What did I just agree to?
Oh my gosh, if we had a penny for every one of those that I've done, we'd be rich. Yes.
Yeah. And then, like we discussed last time, bringing someone with you,
Yes.
to a medical appointment, workplace, that's a little more difficult. A lot of those conversations have to be confidential. But I definitely think that like having somebody there, asking if you can, use a note taker or audio record, so that way you can get the notes that you can look back at. I think those things are really important. And just making sure that they like fully understand that, like, if you take these initial steps, like, prepare the one sentence before you go in, so what your stance is on something. And that way, when the emotions in the moment rise up,
Right.
it's in your head, it's memorized as to what your goal is that day in that meeting.
Yeah. Yeah. One thing I've taught myself to do, because I'm so glad you said this, we're trained for instant gratification. So one thing I've trained, and I learned this when I ran a summer camp, is when people would want answers right away, I would be prepared to say, that is a great question, or I would always just say, that's a great question. I will get back to you by, and I would always give a specific amount of time and a date, because I found that if I did that, then that kind of just tided them over until I would get that answer to them. And I would always give myself about 12 extra hours, because you never know what's going to happen in life. Plus, I was working with kids. Plus, if you can deliver early, that gains you a little bit more respect. So that's what I always tell myself. And then I'll remind myself in the moment, I don't have to react. I don't have to respond. And I tell myself that mentally. And I don't know why that helps me so much, but maybe that will help other people stand there and say, it's okay. I don't have to respond right this minute.
Yes. And that's that pausing. Take time to pause, ask for the 24 hours, 12 hours, give me a few days, like whatever it is that you personally, some people process things different, and they're not audible. Many of us are not audible thinkers. We receive something, we hear it, but we really don't comprehend it. Often I'll get home and like write out some notes or go to write that follow-up email, and I'm like, wait a minute, what did they say? And what was the context of this? And you're like trying to remember those specifics. Yeah. Totally in alignment.
Great points. Okay. A Promise Kept is building nonprofit resource navigation that connects people to the right help in the right place. If someone is listening and wants to build a local network like that, what is the first step, and what is a common mistake to avoid?
First step for me was, obviously I have a lot of nonprofit experience and knowledge in my community. But even with that, like I reached out to other CEOs, other founders, program people, development people, like just asking them for their insight. Like, what are the gaps that you're seeing every week in your organization? And what services are you guys best at? And that's able to help me prepare, my professional listing of who's going where. So if I have someone who comes in as a homicide victim or the family of a homicide victim, then I know this agency is the one that they need the most, right? Like I need to keep them with me because there's not a homicide specific nonprofit in my area, right? In addition to that, if it's domestic violence, like, okay, is this something I'm equipped with? Like, where is the victim at in this in the current place. What do they need? Do they need housing? Do they need to be in a shelter? Do they need to be in those different items? And then once you find out what they need, then I know where to navigate them to. And I think finding out like all of the resources around you, I think is super helpful. And I think it's helpful not just for me, and because, my foundation, I want and have a portion that is, nonprofit navigation for victims, but also it's for, I feel like all nonprofits, there's this competitive, like, yes, you're going for the same donor dollars, but like everybody's goal is the same, right? To help the community, whether it's homelessness or domestic violence or children, education, whatever it is, we all have the same goal of making a better community around us and helping those that, are in tough situations. And I think that as nonprofits, if we work together, it's okay to say, like, this isn't the client for me. Like, my organization cannot help this client. Let me send them here, and making those phone calls, and all of us working in partnership together.
Yes. Because I think what you're saying is the most important thing is the victim. And we want to make sure that never in this process they feel like they're lost or dropped. And so when partnerships are established and exist between nonprofits, when someone walks in the door, whether or not you do that service, you're still helping them, because you can say, you know what? I hear you. You've had a terrible day. Let me give you 5 minutes. I'm going to walk you over to Nikki, and she's going to be able to take care of everything. And then in the person's mind, in all the, what should we call it, the haze that happens when you're dealing with big things, they're not going to know that you took them to a different nonprofit. They're not even going to care. What they're going to know is that you cared enough to listen, to see them, and get them where they needed to be, and not make them repeat their story, which is so important.
Yes, exactly. And that leads, and I think, to, the common mistake that people make. And I do think that is, they're launching with passion, but not structure. And often people build the programs first without building the partnerships. And I think partnerships should come first. When I, was founding A Promise Kept, yes, I was very strategic in everything that I did, but the first steps that I wanted to take was the partnerships. And I wanted the partnerships with law enforcement. I wanted with the state attorney. I wanted the community partnerships, city commission, county commissioners, city commissioners. I wanted all of that in place, because I can do so much more if I have those partnerships in place. So yes, the passion is there. I love this. I want to help people. I think it's something that I'm really great at. But building that partnership is key for me, because I'm only one person. I'm only one organization. I can't service everybody in my community. I can't service everybody in the country, but I can build partnerships where we can work together to service all of those people.
Correct. And you're saying exactly what I always say. You have to have strong foundations. And when people think about starting a nonprofit, think about it. The analogy I give is you're building a house. You've got to have a great architectural plan. You've got to have a great engineer that puts that architectural plan into place, and your foundation has to be strong enough to withstand any national disaster. And if you approach it with that mindset, like you're saying, the partnerships, the strategy, and the methodical footsteps forward, it sounds like it takes longer, but in reality, it takes less time. And it's stronger.
Before my launch, I was speaking to people saying, I'm launching a nonprofit. I'm getting ready to start a nonprofit. And I was working with them prior to my first document being filed. I was networking first. The brand can come second, but that network needs to be there from the beginning.
Exactly. All right, let's talk one of my favorite things. So you built a nonprofit with early momentum and a high caliber board. And oh, Nikki, if I had $1 for every time I talk about strengths of boards, we'd both be rich here. What did you look for in board members? And I want to stress, one of the most important things is, what did you look for in board members? And what standards did you set to protect the mission from day one?
So, um, I, I feel very lucky and very blessed. Not often does a nonprofit start with the caliber of board that I have. And I'm very, very grateful. As you discussed, this is the grateful theme for today. But I'm extremely grateful. People that believe in your mission and believe in your passion and your heart and see you and know you and are willing to sign on to something brand new. And when they're respected in the community already, it's such a huge compliment. So just, had to say that first and foremost, that I'm eternally grateful for the caliber and the momentum. It's been great. Now, obviously, because I've been a advocate for so long and gotten press and all of those things, like I knew if I launched this, that I was going to get the press. So I knew I couldn't just get family, friends, people on my board, because I knew I would get the press instantly. So I kind of was at a disadvantage as a founder in that aspect, because I needed to come out very strong with nothing ahead of time, because I knew that the press was going to pick it up.
Or was it your strength?
I mean, maybe.
See, to me, listening to you talk, I feel like it's a strength. And I feel like you were very strategic in how you set this up, launched your networking, I would argue even your brand, and how you strategically recruited the right board members because you understood the value of your mission.
Yes, I did understand the value, but I do think that I felt a lot of pressure. I did feel the pressure because I knew that the press was going to be there. So I knew if I was going to do this, I had to do it right. And, making those first asks was, so scary for me. This is my dream. And I have this vision of what this can be and what it will be. And having that kind of pressure, this is deeply personal to me. It's honoring my friend. It's in her remembrance. So any failure would be me failing her as well, so I was very deeply involved, but I am very strategic, just naturally. I think long game, not short game. I am an outside the box thinker. So yes, I would have probably still done many of the same things because of that, perfectionism and high functioning. But with me in this board, I went with discipline first. And I mapped out what areas did I need on my board. And so I identified those 4 areas first, being, mental health, law enforcement, law, financial oversight, governance, lived experience. Like I have lived experience. I have education, I have professional experience, I have all of those things, but I didn't want my lived experience to be the only voice of lived experience. So happens that, 2 of my board members one of them had, lost her brother to suicide. So she knows that grief process and has that lived experience with her family and dealing with the police and everything in regards to her brother's case. And then I have another board member that she also lost a friend in high school to homicide. A connection. I've known her for a couple of years. I had no idea. We had never discussed that part of our lives. Had no idea that we had this thing in common until I asked. And, she was very enthusiastic. I have another board member, actually a newer board member that it's a high profile case. She's been on Hulu, 48 Hours, everything. She lost her daughter to a homicide. So I have very strong people that have lived the system and know the process. So they know what our clients are going through in that section. And then, yes, I chose the strongest person for the seat, looking at, their professional career, their expertise, their intelligence, all the, professional resume items that you would typically look at, right? But as much as that expertise mattered to me, what mattered to me more was their character and their heart. And I needed to know at the core that they operate with their heart in every aspect. I'm someone who operates with my heart, and I'm sure you can speak to this as well. You know, you're in a nonprofit, and yes, everybody's, you know, doing it for the right reasons, and they're working hard, but you can tell the difference of whose heart is actually in the mission, that specific mission, not just helping others. And I wasn't afraid to choose people that, you know, had more to offer in that area than I did, that knew more than me. I think sometimes when you're, you know, a founder or CEO, any of those things, not just in the nonprofit world, but any world, like a lot of people have a hard time, like having someone who's maybe smarter than them or more polished in an area than them. But that's who I wanted. So as much as my lived experience I wanted somebody whose lived experience was more, which is why I intentionally looked for someone who had been in a media frenzy, who understood the media side. And, you know, and now I have, you know, my board member, and she's gone through it way more than I have. You know, her case was much more severe, it was her daughter, you know, there was so much involved in that case. But I went specifically law enforcement, law, finance, all of those things. I wanted the best of the best. The best of the best that has the best heart as well. And I think that sometimes we just forget that, like, strong leadership is not surrounding yourself with people that make you comfortable. It's actually surrounding yourself with the people that make you uncomfortable, because that's what's going to make me achieve more. Because I can tell you now, when I'm sending an email to my board, if I'm sending something speaking on a legal matter, because I know that I have an attorney that's the best of the best on there, I make sure that anything that I'm saying, I'm double checking, I'm researching beforehand. That makes me better. And when I'm dealing, you know, meeting with clients, I realize, you know, already in the short time that when I'm meeting with them, it's like in my mind, right? So when I have a client that's talking to me about her case, you know, I'm very careful about my ethical standards, my legal standards, like all of those things, because I know that I have an attorney on my board that if I cross or do something wrong, he's not going to be happy. So it's like, it's kind of like that, you know, that's the angel on my shoulder that I get to carry with me in all areas. Finance, law enforcement, mental health, like I have all of them. It's like all these little angels on my shoulder that like are making sure that Nikki does everything correctly.
Right. Oh my goodness. I think you sound so lucky to have all that. All right, let's talk growth and maintenance. What are systems you are building now, even while still growing, so you don't burn out your team or dilute your model?
So I think growth without a system is what creates burnout. So if the systems I'm putting in place are to protect the mission and the people carrying it. And, you know, what we've been doing is like, you know, I have a board dashboard with measurable outcomes, communication, templates, documented policies, ethical standards, not, you know, in my business, you know, I have, you know, victims have state rights, they have federal rights. So I have to make sure that everybody knows what those are, to where we make sure that everybody's doing it. Succession planning, you know, my bylaws, you know, I think are incredible because they're all about the protection. You know, thankfully I have the experience of being in the nonprofit world for so long. So I know those things that come up that are policies that may be changed. So I did a lot of, you know, making sure that the founder was protected, my goals were protected. And this original board, I think maybe something I'm doing something a little different than most is that my founding board cannot be removed from a promise kept. So they can choose to step off of the board. They can, I mean, unless there's something like, illegal, bad representation, something like that, that would be just cause. But my founding board members, because of how strategic I was, informing them that when they step off, like, I will always have my founding board members as an advisory council. And it's in my bylaws that the organization, 20 years from now, I'm not here. A new CEO can't come in and say they're not listening. I've seen it before. I've seen it with
I have too.
That the founder is still alive, but not active. And the CEO is changing too much of what the original vision. And yes, you have to grow. Grow and change is different. But if that core mission change, and that's what I don't want. So I want to make sure that the heart of this organization is protected, because this organization is, not about making money. It's not about being able to, have press and notoriety of any kind. It is for victims, because I have lived that gap that's been missing. And I had to fill in a spot for a family and other families that I've helped along the way, over 24 years. And I know that this is a missing piece. And I know it's a missing piece because of the board that I got. And I know that the outpouring of excitement, everybody that I talk to is so excited that this is being created. Like, everybody sees the need for this. And that just reinforces that I have to make sure that this stays just as it is. So I think putting in all of those things is how you help to create that system, and everything like laid out in detail. It's not rushed. It's not quick. And I'm very concise. Like, not burning out my board is really important to me. Obviously, when you're first building, there's so much stuff that has to be done, right? Like, you got to get so many board votes on approvals and appointments and, all of these things. And it can be a lot. We're developing every document, everything from scratch. There's nothing, I can't go pull this from somewhere else. I can't, my vision is a different model than what's out there. And because of that, I try to be real concise with my board, and I try to, do one complete email with like, here's the updates. Like, we have a text chain if there's something like major or important, they follow social media and all that. So they see like the regular updates. And I think that that's sufficient. But when it comes to the work, I give one email. Here's all the action items that I need done. Here's the deliverables I need from you, and you. And can I have it back in 48 hours? And I'm very clear on what I need, why I need it, and trying to minimize and remember that they're volunteers and they're giving their time and their expertise because they believe in me, and I need to be very respectful of their time.
And one thing too that I always like to remind nonprofits of is it's okay to grow slowly. It is okay to go slow. It is better.
This has gone so fast. This is much faster than I anticipated.
Well, okay, let me rephrase that maybe. It is okay if you are slow and consistent and strategic. Now, the universe may have a completely different speed limit for you. I can't say anything about that. But when you are methodical and you have a plan and you tackle one thing at a time, it just goes quicker, obviously. But it's okay to do that slowly. You don't have to feel like you have to solve it overnight.
Yes. And I think sometimes as founder, CEO, top, any leader, whether it's a development leader, a program leader in the organization, I think we all we just want to fix everything. We want to do it, and we are rushing to accommodate whatever that need is, and I think sometimes I have to like remind myself, and like consistently in this process, you know, I'm learning so much about myself because I'm having to tell myself like, I want to do, you know, my to-do list is outrageous, and I look at it and I have to like remind myself it's okay. I don't have to do all of this today. Like, just because I have this idea, this is what I want. Like, what is my priorities? What needs to be done first for the clients and for my board and the community first? And then I can get to all the other stuff. And it's like taking that, allowing yourself and giving yourself grace that it will come. And I just keep taking note of all those meetings and ideas and everything that we have and what we want to accomplish and do. And, you know, there's some, you know, with this board, I have a lot of great ideas and a lot of insight and stuff. So I'm really excited to take a break, to step back sometimes, you know, just that 5-minute break where you step back and you're like, wow, like we're doing this and we're doing amazing work. It's okay that I'm not getting everything done.
Exactly. Yes. Oh my gosh. Grace and gratitude are the themes for sure of this podcast, because the last 2 days I've had to show myself a lot of grace. And I think that's what you're exhibiting is you have all these great ideas, you have all these great people. You're being methodical, you're being strategic, and you're giving yourself grace. And that's the most powerful thing and why you're moving forward so quickly.
Yes. I wish the universe would just like calm down a little bit, but
oh my gosh. Yes. Okay. So let's talk about perception. Because, you know, I think so often what happens with the work we do as nonprofits is that from the outside looking in, people's perception is one thing. And they don't understand what victims go through or even the work that you guys do. So, what do you wish people understood better about victims and families, especially after the headlines fade and the long journey begins? Because, I mean, how often you and I have both heard, well, they just need to get over it, get over that grief and move on, because perception is so different than what is actually going on.
Yeah, just because the family is no longer in that immediate crisis, it doesn't mean that they're not in a crisis. You know, when people see victims, they, you know, have to remember that like grief never expires.
No.
And neither does trauma. And you can heal and you can get through the days and you can take it step by step and you can be better today than you were yesterday. Today can be a good, great, you know, I always think of, you know, when I look at crimes, you know, I frequently speak about the rippling effects of crime and that people have always said that, but I don't think that we've ever really discussed how and what those rippling effects are. Like we speak to immediate, like, oh, finance, or they lost their husband, that person lost their mother, the immediate, but the rippling effects of crime are so deep and they go through generations. Like I was affected by a crime that has affected the way I parent my children. It will probably affect how they parent. Like it really does change family dynamics. And you know, every time a victim or family has to go back to a court date, it reopens that wound. When they have to go to a parole hearing, it triggers the trauma all over again. Like they have to read all of these notes, you know, social media, they pull it up. You know, there's lots of stuff about like the case, the news story, all of those things. And just because the victim and family is like no longer in the crisis, and they're surviving, right? Because what they're doing is surviving. They're not actually over it. They're just surviving. They still need support. They still need resources. Even when, you know, the public can move on, the prosecutors can move on, the police move on to the next case, but the family, they don't move on. It is life changing for them, whether it's domestic violence. You know, I'm a victim of domestic violence myself. And we, you know, it stays with us, you know, 6 years out, and, you know, there'll be permanent changes to our lives and to our cycles forever because of what we experience. We can be healed and we can be doing great, but it's always there. It doesn't go away. It doesn't get erased. And I think, one of the things for me in regards to victims that I really noticed is that most often, one of the reoccurring themes that I realized is that when I mention, my friend Angel, or, that my friend was killed or murdered, and I use those words, like, people are very quiet and standoffish, and like, it makes people uncomfortable. And it shouldn't make somebody uncomfortable, because like, you're erasing their memory. Like, yes, that's what happened to them, and that is my experience. And somebody who's talking to you and opens up to you on, like, I have a friend that was murdered and I want to do this, or, my daughter was killed. And often people like forget to say the names. And I had a friend who lost a child in a car accident. And I remember that one of the things that she said to me is that, like, I always like asked her, like, or mentioned her daughter, talked about funny stories when she was a kid. And she said to me one day, like, thank you for always saying her name.
Mm-hmm.
Because so many people, like, they want to protect the person. It's not ill-intentioned at all. They just want to protect the person. So they think that it can't be discussed. But talking is part of the healing process, and it's how people process. And murder should not be a bad word. And just because I have a friend that was murdered doesn't mean somebody should be like, oh, you shouldn't talk about that. Like, why are you saying that? And I think that same sentiment I have is in regards to the offender. Frequently it's always like, we don't want the story to be about the offender. But I do believe that the story should be like, I'm someone who, if you look at, the website, the stories, like, I say his name all the time, because if he does get paroled, I want every job he goes to, every girl he dates, everything that happened. If somebody types in his name online, I want them to pull every single story that I did about him, every single article I wrote, every quote I've ever said about him, every detail of that crime, because that is in a way exactly how I'm still advocating for her. Because if he does get out, I want someone to know, and I want to protect the next person from, girls date somebody and they have no idea who they are or what they've done. And when somebody gets out of parole, if he were to move to another state, they would have no idea. If he doesn't stay in our hometown, they would have no idea. And I've spoken to, quite a few, homicide victims' families. And, in that same regard, just asking them, like, really wanting to get their insight. Sometimes it's like, oh, I don't want to make him famous. I don't want to do those things. But it's kind of like a double-edged sword, right? Because you need to do one to do the other, and it's a balance, and everybody's degree of that is different. For me, his family and the reactions and things that I've experienced with the killer's family has made me want to do that even more, because of their reaction to the things that I've done. And not in a retaliation way, but this is a factual, this is not emotional. Like, I didn't make the decisions. I'll tell you a funny story. I had somebody, one of his family members, become a troll and put a comment to me that, like, I need to just sit down and stop this, that it's been 30 years and I should just get over it, that no matter how much I do, that I won't be able to bring her back. And last time I checked, I don't decide parole hearings. All I do is speak the truth and tell the parole board factual information regarding this case, remind them of the severity of it, and then the parole board makes the decision. So I didn't keep him in prison, and he made that decision the moment he took her life. Like, he ruined his own future, but they blame me as I ruined his future because they feel he should have been let out in 20 years. I disagree. And we can have different opposing opinions. Like, if it was my son and something happened with one of my children, I may feel different too. And I may feel they can be rehabilitated, but I have my reasons for believing he's not. Because it's not that I don't believe in rehabilitation. It's not that I don't believe that children, at 18, 19 years old, that men can commit a crime, and their brain doesn't fully develop until 26, that impulse control, so they don't have that aspect. It's not that I think that everybody should be in there, but I do believe there are most circumstances like this, you really have to speak on the crime and tell what has happened, and it shouldn't make other people uncomfortable. For the victim, it's hard enough for them to have lived it, but when people make you feel like when you're discussing it that you're doing something wrong, you're re-victimizing that victim because they didn't do anything wrong.
Right. So you have said so many important things here. I just want to recap some of them. So I'm going to speak a little bit more generically, but still tie it to you. So it's so funny. I literally just this morning listened to a Mel Robbins podcast on trauma. I know. I listen to one of hers a day. I feel like she's become my best friend and she doesn't even know it. Anyways, on trauma, and something that she said that you have said here, and I just want to be very, very clear and say this very clearly as a fact. When you dismiss someone's trauma, you are re-traumatizing them.
Correct.
What you experience, Nikki, might not appear to me as a trauma, but it doesn't matter how it appears to me. It matters how it affects your nervous system. That's what makes it trauma for you. And when we respect that, when we acknowledge, yes, Nikki, that was traumatic for you, then we help you heal. We help you move on from it. And speaking about trauma is how you heal trauma.
Correct.
And what I think that you have so very clearly said is that when you hide from facts, when you allow emotion to rule you versus what has factually happened, when you dismiss other people's trauma because you are so deep in your own pain, you cannot clearly see a path out and you lash out and you hurt other people. And it makes me so sad for them. It truly does. But, you know, whenever we deal with emotions, it's hard, it's complicated. And I'll be honest with you, Nikki, yesterday was a very emotional day for me. My daughter and I had to go on like 3 walks just to process all the emotions. And by the end of the night, I'm not kidding you, 6 o'clock at night, we're sitting down on the couch looking at each other and we were like, why does it feel like midnight? But rather than dismissing what was traumatic for her, what was traumatic for me, all the emotions, we found common ground and we moved forward, right?
Yes.
And let me just state, it was not between us. We were facing things together. So let me put that positive note out there, right? But you should never dismiss a person's trauma, and you should never not allow somebody to talk about it.
Yes.
The greatest gift that you can give to anybody is to see them and to hear them.
Hear them. Yes, exactly. And when you shut down when somebody says that and you don't want to engage in the conversation because it's tough for you, or maybe you don't want to hear about crime or whatever, but what you're doing is victimizing them, and they're not being heard, they're not being seen. And that's what every victim and survivor and family of the victim, anyone associated with it, that's all they need is to be seen and be heard. Like, that's what advocacy is about, is allowing someone to be seen and heard. It doesn't mean you have to agree with what they say.
Right. And that is what we are missing today in the country as a whole. We do not need to agree in order to heal and move forward.
Correct.
It's all, and like I always say to my dogs, it's all about being polite and respectful. That's how you make it through life. That's what we talk about, so we don't bark at other dogs. And again, I'm not trying to minimize anything or compare people to dogs. I was simply trying to lighten the mood. So I apologize if that was offensive. All right, we have time.
Love it.
Oh, okay. Well, and also too, I say it all day to my dogs. That helps. Okay, we have time for one more question. And I'm trying to decide, you know what, Nikki, which question I'm gonna let you pick because they're both so important to me. Which one do you think we should close out on? About how to advocate or supporting?
I think we covered supporting kind of in the last one, and like
I
bringing
agree.
somebody with you and all, the most helpful role and all of that. So I do think, reading it as opposition. And I know we touched on that a little bit last time. So you want to read the question?
I do, because there's a specific thing I want to focus on here with you. So, and I've experienced this, I think this, well, it doesn't matter what I think. You've said advocacy is often misread as opposition, or people are labeled as difficult or loud, or all of those negative words. What phrases help people stay calm, clear, and firm when they get labeled difficult, and what should they stop saying immediately?
Okay, well, I'm going to use you as an example because what you just said is it doesn't matter what I say. And you need to be kind to yourself because it always matters
Right.
what you have to say.
You're right. You're right.
We don't use
You're right.
unkind language with Nikki.
Very true. Very
Be kind
true.
to yourself. So like I discussed when I was giving like the 5 steps, I think that it's important, to use phrases like help me understand this process, admitting that you don't know the process and asking for them to help you understand it. Like sometimes I feel like everybody, I feel like it's part of like the state of the world that we're in right now is because people are so afraid to say I don't understand. Like I don't
Oh, I know.
understand this issue, I don't understand politics, I don't understand religion, I don't understand immigration. Like people are afraid to have that, to say I don't understand. I don't understand your viewpoint. I don't understand the process. Like, help me. Like, just say, like, I mean, how much, like, could we, get through a lot more things in the world and solve a lot more problems if for a second we just paused and said, can you help me to understand this? I think, asking like, can you show me where this written policy is? In the workplace, I
Hmm.
think about this like so often. They say, oh, you can't do that. And you're like, okay, but it's okay to ask, like, okay, if I can't do that,
Right.
where's the policy? Is there a written policy?
Right.
Because if there isn't, there should be. So if
Correct.
leadership is saying you can't do this and you ask for it, then that will help the leader to be a better leader because they're going to implement the policy correctly, which is getting it in writing. I'm sure you've seen it many times. There's all these
Oh my gosh,
unspoken
yes.
rules, and you're like, I didn't know this was a rule. That wasn't in the employee
Right.
handbook or whatnot. And then on the victim side, especially like saying like we share the same goal.
I like that. Very positive, very meeting somebody. We share the same goal.
Yes. So like it's not opposition. We share, like reminding the people, and this goes from both sides, not the victim saying it
Right.
to law enforcement or the state attorney or vice versa, but it goes both ways. Like an officer can stop and say, listen, I'm on your side. We have the same goal. I want to help you. How can I help us solve this animosity or the
Right.
problem? Not ignore it, but address it.
Hmm.
Um, and I think sometimes it's just being honest. I'm really big on authenticity and being yourself. And, we're all amazing creatures, good or
Hmm.
bad, good choices, bad choices, past, future, everything. Every human is amazing. And I
Correct.
think just stopping and saying, honestly, I'm not opposing you. I'm not
Right.
against you. I'm seeking clarity. I need help to understand. I am upset right now. This is causing me a lot of emotions. Like just admitting, like being open and vulnerable to admit that honestly, like I'm not opposing, like call it what it is. If you're having a contentious meeting, right? Then stop it and say like, okay, I'm not opposing you. If you feel the other person's like emotions getting elevated, their tone is changing, they're frustrated, all of those things, then just make sure that you call it out because sometimes people don't realize, they're passionate about what they're speaking of or they're frustrated with the system. A state attorney can be super frustrated that they don't have the evidence or law enforcement didn't collect something or the lab messed it up, and they could be frustrated at that, but now it's coming across to you like they're frustrated with you because their emotions are displaced, right?
Right.
And I think just stopping them and saying that, because I feel like a lot of times, it makes people pause and they say, whoa, 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 whoa. And then it stops the misunderstanding from happening, right? And this
Right.
is why advocacy is a skill and not just an action we take or something we
Right.
do. It is something that you can learn.
I'm going to throw something out there that I learned, another tool that I learned with my grandfather. So my grandfather passed away from dementia, and I really struggled with his death. It was something I got very angry about it. And so I decided to use my anger to volunteer for the Alzheimer's Association and teach. And that helped me heal. That helped me grieve. One of the tools that they learned about that I never would have thought of, and I want to give them full credit, is they would create business cards to give to family members and caregivers that they could pass out in public if needed that says, please be patient. The person with me has Alzheimer's.
Oh, I love
And
that.
think of all the ways you can use that. So I very open about this, very public about this. I have very bad case of ADHD, very, very strong case of ADHD. And so it's very easy for me to get very overwhelmed. And then I think sometimes if you don't know what the signs and symptoms of autism are, it can be challenging to try to help someone with autism. So if you empower somebody with a card that says, please be patient, I have autism, please be patient, I have ADHD, that they could hand out in those situations rather than trying to find the words, think too of how much that could help in advocating for yourself.
Yes. I love it. We recently did something similar for, I am work with a nonprofit that does period supplies. And we did a period kit to where it can go into the schools. The girls can carry the card, because how often do girls not want to go up and say, like, I need to go to the restroom, and the teacher says, no, you can't, no bathroom breaks, right?
All the time. Yes.
And who wants to say, like, well, I just started my cycle, I need to go to the bathroom. Instead, we can hand a card, and that card allows them to say it without saying it out loud.
Yes. Yes. I always had to deal with my daughter when she was in high school, that if that happened and the teacher said no, just go to the bathroom and walk out, and I'll get you out of trouble. Right.
Yeah.
But how many parents are going to say that?
Correct. But that's advocating. Like, you're advocating because the process and the system in the classroom doesn't always work.
Right. Right. Nikki, can I just say, very unprofessionally, this is not unprofessionally, very professionally, you are always such a joy and a breath of sunshine. And I realize that we talk about very deep and heavy topics together, but the way that you present them is filled with hope and grace. And I always leave our conversations feeling lighter and brighter and energized and educated. And I just really value the way that you can take topics that are so dark and, without dishonoring anybody or anybody's memory, speak to us in ways that inspire us to do better. And I just really want to thank you for that, because last 2 days have been a little rough. And so I feel like I just got a hug from a friend after this conversation. And I haven't shared anything with you, but I appreciate that you shared that energy, that now I feel like I got a hug on a day I really needed one, and the way that you speak with such grace and poise. And so I want to thank you for your time. 2 hours, Nikki, you've given me 2 hours, and I value that. And I hope our listeners really get a lot out of this and realize that with some grace and kindness, you can change the world.
My favorite sayings has always been, be the change. If you want to see something different, you have to do different. And that's the reason that, I really do try to be, full of positivity and hope. I've been through a whole lot of stuff in my life, and most often people can't believe it, that know me and interact with me, and then they find out and they're like very surprised, and that's why this foundation is here, is I want to encourage victims that, like, you can go through the worst things life can throw at you, and you can still be positive. You don't have to be cynical. You don't have to live afraid. You don't have to do those things. And, it's a conscious decision I made, that, like, I don't want to let anything break that spirit. And I want to help other victims to not break it either, to break their spirit.
You're helping everybody. Let me change that. You're helping everybody, and you're giving out hugs and high fives and support wonderfully. So from the bottom of my heart, thank you. Thank you. And I will be sharing all of this with you. And if there's anything I can ever do to support you, please don't hesitate to reach out. I would love to even just to cheer you on a bad day to remind you how amazing you are.
Thank you so much. I might take you up on that.
Please do. Please do. All right. Thank you, Nikki. We'll talk soon.
All right. Take care.
Okay. Bye.